I'm here with a dear friend of mine, Dr. Earl Hirsch, at the end of the virtual ADA meetings, and we're going to discuss a few of the findings of the meetings and then really how we feel about virtual meetings. So Earl, could you talk with us a little bit about some of the newer insulins?
Yes, thank you, Anne. It's always good to be with you. There were, as usual, quite a few new insulins to think about and to really, I think, hope come to the market. And one of those was the weekly long-acting basal insulin from Novo Nordisk. I did not know this was in development. And the most interesting part about it was there are other companies working on a weekly basal insulin also. My first glance at the data is that I think this will work quite well with people with type 2 diabetes. We have history now using a weekly medication in type 2 diabetes with our GLP-1s. But I am a bit concerned about using a weekly insulin due to the fact that the half-life of this insulin was 196 hours. I mean, that's incredible. And you think about onboarding patients on the outpatient side, but even more so, which has become a big interest of mine, what happens when somebody on a weekly basal insulin comes into the hospital? That insulin is not in the hospital. How do you know how to switch them to and from glargine or NPH or anything else? So it was really fun for me, but I think that we need to see more data and really figure out how are we going to do these changes when these patients come in the hospital.
That makes a lot of sense. And also if their circumstances change or they eat less or they suddenly decide to go on a low carb diet or do anything that people seem to do that changes what they're doing behaviorally that can affect their sugars. But as you stated, I really like the idea of the fact that patients may be more adherent to a once weekly medication. So I'm intrigued as you are, and I think it will be interesting to see their phase 3 trials and to see what comes of it.
Yeah, and Anne, I'll just point out, my last patient I saw today was on a weekly GLP-1, and it was the first time I had seen him since we started it. A very nice man with type 2 diabetes, and he lost 12 pounds. And that is another situation where you want to make a relatively quick change in the insulin if you're starting to see a lot of nocturnal hypoglycemia. But when you have a half-life of 196 hours, there's nothing quick.
No. On the other hand, since I know you and I both love technology, hopefully by the time we have once weekly insulin, everybody will be on CGM and then it'll be easier to monitor. Now, with that in mind, I know this isn't part of the ADA per se, although there was a lot of data on CGM at the ADA, but the Libre II has been approved. And I wondered if you could discuss that a bit and what you think of it.
Well, nobody is more excited than me about it. I mean, we found out that not only was this new sensor approved by the FDA, but there'll be no change in cost. And for a lot of our patients, cost is key, and especially patients who need an alarm for hypoglycemia, which is most of my type 1 patients. I really need to have that low glucose alarm. And for those who do not have good coverage, the cost is so important. Now we actually have a low-cost sensor that can help us defend better against hypoglycemia. I think even more important than that, though, is the improved accuracy of this sensor compared to the previous one. And hopefully soon we will also have integration with pumps for automated insulin delivery with this sensor. We don't have that yet, but I think that's the goal for this. And so I'm quite excited that we now have another choice.
I am too, and I love that it got, as you said, the ICGM designation, so it is now interconnectable with other systems, because the more choice patients get, the better I think it is. And there are a lot of patients who like the way this feels, that it's a lower device in terms of where it doesn't, it suits some people, others prefer a different device, but now we have choice. And I really love the idea of giving people choice for things they're going to be wearing on their body as they go through their lives. So I'm thrilled. I've been waiting for this for a long time, so I'm really thrilled that we have it available. So that leads me into the question about the virtual meetings. What did you think of them? How did you like them? What do you think the future holds for us in our field and sharing information with colleagues?
Well, Anne, I've been thinking about this as we all have, and it's like anything. There's good and bad. I don't have to fly across the country and walk around the meeting jet lagged. Um, but the reality is that I miss seeing my friends. I miss both the professional and the social interaction. And I didn't realize how important it was of meeting colleagues, having coffee, or even running into somebody walking across the street in San Diego, like you and I did one year, and it ends up in a research study, or it ends up as an editorial in a journal. I mean, a lot of what we do is based on our interaction. So that's one thing. But there's just so many. The fact that I can be watching a lecture and then move to another lecture in another room by clicking my mouse, that could never happen with the way the ADA usually is. And I really like the fact that I could see questions and what other people are thinking from the chat rooms. The chat rooms looking at it was great. I will be very interested to see what the final attendance was, but I could see people from all over the world who were attending in the middle of the morning, the middle of the night for them. And from an international point of view, I would not be surprised if we actually had a higher attendance. I think one of the disappointments of mine, I had several posters, and one of my disappointments was there seemed to be very little poster traffic compared to usual in terms of the number of questions I would get, people wanting more information about the data on the poster. I actually think sometimes the posters end up to be as important as some of the oral presentations. And I think with the virtual meeting, with so much information on your computer, sometimes the posters may have been left out more than they were. Now, there are other issues, but those are the main ones that come to the top of my mind.
Well, yes, I thought it was interesting. I actually liked the lectures more than I thought because I was forced to really look at people. And then, of course, if they got too boring, you could switch again. But no, it was really nice to see my really smart colleagues talking about things and just feeling like I was right there with them. I like that. But I think the point you made about the posters is right, because I used to make it an absolute self-mandate that I saw every poster and that I read them and saw them and really wanted to learn from the posters. And I just didn't have time with this to do anything that was a poster. I just, listened to lectures and, felt like that was more accessible. And the chat function was nice. On the other hand, I also did technology interest group a discussion and the whole system kind of broke down. And so there were technical issues when they were trying to do it live. So we were trying to do that whole thing live and it didn't work. But some of those glitches are obviously, things that can be fixed. What I worry about is, our younger colleagues and that we're a tight-knit family, so to speak. I mean, we all know each other. You know me, I know you, we know our buddies. But this has been based on years of sharing time together and a drink together and a meeting together. And we know each other no matter where we are, but I really worry that some of this is lost for the younger colleagues, that I can't just drag them over and say, here, meet, Dr. Hirsch, he's a legend. I can't do that. And so I really hope that in the future, we are able to do both, that we have virtual capacity, and maybe for people who might have to come from overseas, it works better. But when you can meet together, at least annually, I think that there's something really good inherent in that. I think it's the same for me with patients, is that I like doing telemedicine, but I still think I have to meet them physically at least once a year just to sort of reconnect and look at their feet and their injection sites and everything else. I like the real touch at least once a year. So I think we'll come up with some way that is in between once we're through with COVID, whenever that might be.
Yeah, I'll just add, who knows what the future is going to look like, especially for next year, which to me is a really important ADA meeting, being the 100th anniversary of insulin. I mean, that's a big deal. My guess is that if we are able to meet in person, people will still have the option to do it virtually. And what that will mean from a logistical point of view is taping our lectures 2-3 weeks before the actual presentation won't happen. Everything will be live, which actually is not necessarily a good thing for some people with their schedules. What I really liked about this is that at the end of the day, there's always stuff that I missed, and I could then go that night and listen to somebody like David Nathan or Ann Peters or one of these people who I couldn't go to their talk because I had another talk I wanted to see. And I really, really enjoyed that.
Right, me too. There's something good in all of this. Where is the ADA meeting next year if it's held in a real place?
Washington, D.C.
All right. Well, Earl, I hope to see you in Washington, D.C. for 1,000 reasons, but if not, I'll see you some way, somehow, and I really appreciate your time today. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.